Good afternoon, I'm Marika Schroeder, bringing you the latest developments from the Middle East. US President Donald Trump has announced that at the request of the Iranians, he is halting plans to target Iranian energy plants by 10 days until April 6th. The US Commander-in-Chief further disclosed that US-Iran talks are going very well. This follows yesterday's cabinet meeting where President Trump set the record straight, further discrediting the fake news media by stating that Iran is begging to make a deal with the US.
We have very substantial talks going on with respect to Iran, with the right people. You know, I told you about a present, right? Steve, can I reveal the present?
You can do anything you want, sir.
They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. We're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. That was 3 days ago. And I didn't think much about it. And then I watched the news and they said, a very good anchor, actually. Happened to be Fox. But I watched it, and he said, something's unusual happening. There are 8 boats that are going right up the middle of the Hormuz Strait. 8 big tankers are going loaded up with oil right through. And I said, well, I guess they were right, and they were real. And I think they were Pakistani flagged. Yes. And I said, well, I guess we're dealing with the right people. And actually, they then apologized for something they said, and they said, we're going to send 2 more boats. And it ended up being 10 boats.
During yesterday's cabinet meeting, US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, confirmed negotiations are underway, despite the Iranian regime's denial. Witkoff reported that Washington presented a 15-point peace deal framework to Iran, with the Pakistani government acting as the mediator. Witkoff also addressed the necessity for Operation Epic Fury, stating that during talks prior to the military campaign, the Iranian regime rebuffed every request from the US to reach a diplomatic settlement. He added that he has no doubt that the US exhausted all efforts for a peaceful resolution.
That we have, along with your foreign policy team, presented a 15-point action list that forms the framework for a peace deal. This has been circulated through the Pakistani government, acting as the mediator. And this has resulted in strong and positive messaging in talks, as you just indicated to the press. But these are sensitive diplomatic discussions, and you have directed us to maintain confidentiality on the specific terms and not negotiate through the news media as others do.
Calling out the mainstream media's misleading coverage on the Middle East conflicts, US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth provided an update on the successes of US-Israeli operations in Iran. He noted that Operation Epic Fury has taken out 10,000 enemy targets and over 150 naval vessels, destroying underground facilities and the regime's defense industrial base. Reiterating his point, Hegseth added that 18 Warthogs and Apache helicopters are now operating in Iranian airspace and the Strait of Hormuz, aircrafts typically deployed in low-altitude, close air support roles once the enemy has no meaningful air defenses left. And following yesterday's cabinet meeting, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters on his way to the G7 meeting holding in Paris today that it's in the interest of European Union and G7 member states to assist the US in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, while EU nations argue that Iran isn't Europe's war. Rubio pointed out that Ukraine isn't America's war, yet they've contributed more to the war than any other country.
Secretary, are you going to ask G7 to help with the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's in their interest to help. The other countries get far more of their fuel from there than we do. So.
But what kind of help are you going to ask? Is it minesweepers, naval help?
Well, those specifics I'll leave it to the Department of War as to exactly what, but it's in their interest. It's in their national interest.
Do you think President Trump criticizing NATO this morning, that sentiment?
I think he just made an observation, and the observation is that the United States is constantly being asked to help in a war, and we have more than any other country in the world, on a war that's happening in another continent, in Ukraine. But when the U.S. had a need, he didn't get proper positive responses. So right now he's just making the observation that, I think there was a couple of the leaders in Europe who said that this was not Europe's war. Well, Ukraine is not America's war, and yet we've contributed more to that fight than any other country in the world. So it'll be something to examine. The president will have to take into account down the road.
Not only have US-Israeli operations dismantled Iran's navy, but in their latest strike, the Israeli Defense Forces reported eliminating the IRGC's Navy commander, Alireza Tangsiri, in Bandar Abbas, and the head of the IRGC's Navy Intelligence Directorate, Behnam Rezai.
אנחנו ממשיכים לתקוף בעוצמה את המטרות של משטר הטרור האיראני. אמש חיסלנו את מפקד חיל הים של משמרות המהפכה. לאיש הזה יש הרבה דם על הידיים, ובנוסף הוא זה שהוביל את סגירת מצרי הורמוז. זוהי עוד אחת מהדוגמאות של שיתוף הפעולה בינינו לבין ידידינו ארצות הברית, במטרה משותפת להשיג את מטרות המלחמה.
Speaking earlier at the ongoing G7 summit, UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper acknowledged that Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz are holding the global economy hostage by threatening international shipping routes and freedom of navigation.
We will, of course, be discussing the conflict in the Middle East, where we want to see a swift resolution that reaches regional stability and security and opens the Strait of Hormuz at a time when 130 countries have come together at the United Nations to condemn Iran's egregious aggression towards the Gulf states and also its attacks on international shipping. And that is so important because Iran cannot hold the global economy hostage as a result of what it is doing.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte attempted to justify the EU's slow response to President Trump's request for assistance in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. While presenting his annual report for 2025 in Brussels, Rutte acknowledged that the US kept Operation Epic Fury's plans confidential from its allies to ensure its success. However, he simultaneously blamed the confidential nature of the operation for the EU's delayed response, having been caught off guard.
What I've been seeing is some frustration with him about the Europeans needing to take time to react to his request when it comes to this question of making sure that sea lanes are open. And I said, hey, there is a reason for that. And the reason is that for good reasons, the US was not able to consult with allies because they wanted to keep the campaign secret. And again, for good reasons, to make sure that nobody knew what happened on that Saturday morning. And there's always a risk if you inform too many people that things might leak. But that also had the disadvantage that it takes time for the Europeans to get organized. The good news now is that thanks to the leadership from the United Kingdom, France and others, originally 6 countries, the UK, France, Italy and Germany and Japan and the Netherlands, then on Friday 22 countries and by now over 30 countries, have committed to come together to discuss the what, the where and the when it comes to making sure that the sea lanes stay open.
And today marks the 25th edition of the Global Day of Prayer with the president of Loveworld Incorporated, Pastor Chris Oyakhilome. Last night, in the build-up to the Global Day of Prayer, during the monthly Global Prayer and Fasting program, Pastor Chris referenced 1 Timothy 2 verses 1 and 2. He showed that the result of making supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks for all men, kings, and all that are in authority is a quiet and peaceable life. Pastor added that we must pray in this manner if we want peace in our societies, communities, cities, and nations.
And God has told us in His Word what to do. He tells us to take unto you, He says, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. And it shows us how to be on the offensive. You look at the 16th verse. Above all, after telling us to put on the whole armor, above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. That's wonderful. To quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. I have to tell you where Israel and America learned that from, with the Iron Dome, with which to quench all the fiery darts coming from those drones. It was already in the book.
Tune in this evening on any of the Love World networks at 6 p.m. GMT+1 to participate in the Global Day of Prayer, and stay connected to our news channels for the latest updates on the situation in the Middle East.